We'll get started. Welcome back, everybody, for session 3. I'm super excited to be here with you. This week's gone by fast. A lot's happened, both in the world, in Michigan, and on campus, as we continue to navigate this major event together. Just to start with some feedback, we had 98 responses to the survey. That's super helpful to us when you take the minute to fill that out. There will be one every session, so please remember to do that at the end. People felt like they felt more connected to the conversation last time. The use of the polls and the chats were appreciated by quite a few people, so we'll keep working on that today. Today we're going to do some pulling of your ideas again to inform what we're doing. There's also quite a few comments that talked about appreciating that we went back to a concept and then brought it forward into session 2. We are definitely going to do that today because the conversation I tried to have with you so briefly, last week is a really major paradigm shift for most people because most of us were born into a cultural stream that's framed in an outside-in package, and we're taught that our experience is brought to us by other people and situations. And not very many people have an inside-out frame where they really get that they're the creator of their moment-to-moment experience of reality and that their creative process is behind their behavior as opposed to other people being behind their behavior. Again, we say, she's driving me crazy, they're on my last nerve, he's pushing my buttons. We've got it framed outside in. So we'll definitely go forward today as we try to reinforce that and then really lean into thought. Like, how does thought create our reality, both in a moment and then a little bit kind of over time? Because one of the things I'm wanting you to witness as we move forward is what's happening in your thought world. And I don't want you to notice that so that you can effort to change or control or manage your thought world. Quite the opposite. I want you to be able to notice when you're creating something and then simply just move your attention away from it so that it can release. That's part of what people are struggling with. The release is if you're having the thoughts and you're creating something and you're trying to effortfully manage that and get those thoughts back in order, you're not going to be able to release it. So two things we're going to talk about today. One is, who am I when I'm not caught up in thought? Who am I when I'm psychologically open and resting? What do I have access to? What can I count on? What's my default setting? Like, who am I before I jump on that thought train and take it for a ride? Before I have a reaction, can I be home, notice myself in a thought store, back up a little bit, and then be able to come back home to myself. So we'll talk about those two pieces today. A lot of folks really appreciated my authenticity, and people can learn when I'm talking about my experience better than if I'm trying to talk about theirs. Because as soon as I start to talk about what they're doing in their story, people, their ego and sometimes their armor gets activated and then they're defensive and they can't hear it. But what I'm describing, I'm willing to be authentic because I'm just like you are. And no degree, no life experience is going to make me operate any differently. I'm actually operating the same way I operated when I was as old as my granddaughter, who is 2. She's making this up the same way. Right? So we're just really trying to get an understanding of that. And even knowing it, you still get caught up and you still have reactions. So I'm really willing to brace my full humanity. I'm hoping you become a person that can really do that too, because the rules we have about how people perceive us and how hard we try to look good, and it's just a lot of pressure. And as I said, I'm going to get confused of what I said where, but as I said, I don't think here, perfectionism really isn't about performance. It's about managing people's perceptions. And I can just tell you, I have a lot more ease. I have less burnout. I'm more effective when I'm not worrying about what other people think about me And instead, I'm just showing up and bringing it to the best of my ability, lined up with my values, as opposed to trying to navigate everybody else's thoughts about me. That was just exhausting. So authenticity is a key to that, and we'll talk more about that as we move along. Just reminding folks about the practical reset skills. We've got like a chunk of you who are practicing pretty regularly. Then there's the ones that didn't do the survey, so I don't know if you are or not. But just these are the skill sets that we want you to keep thinking about. Are you noticing the quality of your state of mind? You might notice this picture behind me. It's another way to think about, no, my wife's watching today. I just want her to know I did not actually write on our wall that there's actually paper here. But so this might be mud mind. Like this is like when you're really caught up in thought and your thoughts pressured. And it's like that moving fan I was talking about. And if I'm saying something to you, and I try to have you see something, and that's that's not gonna get in, and it's gonna ricochet back away, kind of like when an email bounces because your inbox is full, right? And luckily, we're not there all the time. Sometimes I still have a lot of thought, but it's not quite as pressure and rapid. It's not quite as muddy. I'm starting to slow down. I'm starting to open up. Sometimes my thought feels like there's a lot of it, but there's some space between the thoughts. And then sometimes it's more open, right? And if I try to say something to myself from here, it's probably going to actually get in. And that's what an aha moment looks like when I have a sight from within, when I have a brand new thought, when something hits me from out of the blue, when something occurs to me, when I let go of a worry and open back up, I'm actually allowing access to new ideas. We want to value new ideas. So the reset skills are important because when you notice that you're in mud mine, we want you to have some opening up capacity because this is really helpful. And we want to be able to do that more often through a day. We want to have more time when we're open and less time when we're activated and processing. This is processing mode, like computer, analytical, active. And this is receiving. In one of my classes, I talk about being curious, open, and wondering, right? And one of the people in my class said it's a different way to think about having a cow. Like, I want to be curious and open and wondering. When there's a big problem, I want to have that creativity to be able to come through. So all these reset skills support that. And the ones that are in blue on the screen, people are demonstrating that they're working those. The one that people seemed confused about, which I tried to introduce last week, is the what 5 things. And really that skill, if you will, that technique is really just bringing your full beaming attention to the room. Or I'll tell you an example of what 5 things. I came out of a session once, somebody shared something really traumatic with me. It gave me a lot of visual images. This happens a lot in my job. After they left, I was still jazzed up. I still had kinetic energy physiologically. It was just powerful. And so I know I needed to clear my palate before the next person. So I went outside of Olin Health Center and I walked over to Bessie Hall. And I was just standing on the step, and at first I just did a little rocking. Here's this. I'm wanting that story to leave, and I'm wanting to fall back into this space because it'll help me reset and be refreshed, like clicking refresh on a website for the next person. And also, I don't want to have cortisol running through my body. So even if I didn't have another person, it still would have been good for me to go and have that reset, so I could release the physiological experience of that last session. And so I'm standing on the steps of Berkey Hall, and I'm just rocking and noticing, and there's lots of people around, and I could still feel myself still. And so I said to myself, Lisa, I speak to myself this way. I say, Lisa, what 5 things can you see right now? And I'm like, there's a beautiful tree right here that probably has been here for 20 million years. It's very majestic. I love that tree. There's some mopeds parked here. And I said a couple other things. And I'm just breathing. I'm like coming in the present moment. I'm bringing my left brain to a task of describing the moment. And then I said, what color do you notice? And I looked up and I saw this burgundy that was, I just thought it just popped like a cardinal in the winter. And it was kind of a gray day. And I noticed that. And then on the next breath, I said, notice all of that color. And I was like, wow, there's a lot of that color. And I was standing there and then I was like curious, like, why is there so much of that color? And then I realized it was Friday and it was Ohio State was in town and those were Ohio State people walking around our campus. And then I joked that I had a different thought about that. But that's like, what 5 things? What 5 things can I hear? What 5 things can I smell? If I'm outside walking on campus right now, which I was the other day, I could smell the magnolias. I could smell the blooming. So smell can work. Hearing, sight, touch, all of those. Just you're using your senses to bring you to the present moment. So I want you to be practicing all of those skills still. Going to keep checking in about it because it is about opening back up so you can have that energy. These are some of the things I was asking you to notice last week. And I'm just going to open up the chat and just see, like, I'm just the general question. How is your noticing going? What did you notice and what happened when you noticed? I'm trying to get you to recognize the value of noticing. And also, I'm also wanting you to inspire other people. Like, why would we want to practice these skills? What's it matter? Megan is, there it goes, okay. I'm more in tune with what's going on. I noticed myself panicking over uncertainty and time to stop it from becoming panic attack. So you noticed it, you noticed that you started to go there and then you were able to reset. I forgot all about it. Any tips for remembering? Noticed I needed to get off of Facebook. So you noticed you were gripped by Facebook and spending a lot of time. You noticed, realized that wasn't what you wanted to do and you shifted. Found myself being more active and paying attention to what was going on. I haven't been able to keep in touch with reality and emotion. Noticed lack of patience and was able to step back and try again. Immediately got stressed when email from President Stanley came out. Absolutely. That email was like a fodder for like jumping on some thought trains. We'll talk about that. But we don't have any idea what's going to really unfold with that. Was in mud mine most of the week. I want to go back and see that one. They're so fast. Okay. So able to get out some frustrated energy. That sounds a little bit like you were honoring that you were frustrated. That's a good thing. When I feel close my eyes and the sounds, it helps center and release the reeling thoughts. Yeah, the thoughts that we have, which might make total sense given what's going on, they're going to send us reeling. Because whenever we have a thought, it's not just a thought. It becomes physiologically our experience. I noticed anxiety, so I removed myself from the news and took a deep breath, exhaled, forgot the next step. I didn't get to read the rest of that. I was up about a student interaction last night. Took me a long time to remember. I used the acknowledge, honor, release. Good. I'm glad you did that. There's some good noticing happening here. Noticing. So news from campus is out there. It either has an unknown quality. People are trying to tell us what they know, and then they're also trying to tell us what they don't know. I think the reason that they tell us what they don't know is so that they've acknowledged that they don't know some things, so that you don't think that they're withholding from you what's happening. I worked on breathing and concentrated on how soft my puppy's fur was to calm down. Excellent. You can do that with a blanket. I have a weighted blanket, so when I'm here by myself and there isn't somebody around, I can feel the weight on the blanket, and that helps me settle into my best energy and the part of me that can just hold me. Yesterday we were having a conversation about being my own partner. So even when I'm by myself, I'm still here to help remind me, noticing nature, flowers, blooms on the trees. Acknowledged again that I cannot persuade others to understand things as I understand them. It's a trigger for me. And now I'm more equipped to move past opinions and master my own reaction. Yeah, because the things we care the most about are the areas where we're really at risk of losing our ever-loving mind and reacting in ways that feel out of alignment with us. If we do that, we're going to feel shame later. So somebody decided to avoid the news altogether and watch a show that was more lighthearted and open. So, all right, so this sounds like some good noticing. Sitting in the sunshine and just letting all the stress go. Yeah, if you're sitting in the sunshine, I really want you to really feel the heat on your body. Really allowing yourself. You have to give yourself permission to settle into that moment. And then to notice what you fill up with in that moment. It's just allowing you to return to your fresh energy. It's allowing you to return to who you were before you saw the email. So you were resting, you read an email, you made up a lot of story maybe, had a lot of fear. When you recognize that, being able to settle back in to who you were before you read the email. I do that sometimes when I almost have a car accident or something and my heart's racing. I just want to pull over and I want to fall into who I was before that happened. Because what's happening is we're getting startled and we're pulling into our fight, flight, freeze mode, understandably. And we want to come back to what do we really know? What don't we know? And then it kind of goes back to if we don't know, how do I do this here? I don't get to know, but there's a lot about President Stanley's email that we don't get to know, right? And in this moment, it's okay not to know. And in this moment, I'm okay. And there's uncertainty. Okay, because I'm going to need to navigate the uncertainty. A lot of what happens with the finances related to MSU, which are about pandemic plus Nassar's lawsuit plus other things, is going to take us time to know. We don't want to lose all of our life until those decisions came. I used the breathing when I couldn't sleep the other night. My mind was going wild with thoughts. And so if your mind is going wild with thoughts when you're trying to go to sleep and you're trying to control the thoughts or figure out why you're having those thoughts or make yourself not have those thoughts, it's going to pull you into it. Where if you're just breathing and noticing, there's a release that comes to that. Yeah. And I want to honor someone saying they're a financial officer and finances are stressing you out. The finances are a reason across the nation why people will have thoughts and there's not enough data and a lot of fear. And so it is about leaning in. When you're grounded and centered, you want to have some reflective thought about it. When it's got you gripped and your stress response is up, the thoughts you're going to have about it aren't going to help you. They're just going to be more of this. In that scenario, it just gets bigger and bigger. And that's not just in your brain, because your brain doesn't know that you're imagining job loss and foreclosure and loss of business and being understood. It's like when I used to take a test in college. I used to have test anxiety. I used to think the test caused my anxiety. And part of what would happen is, if I don't get this test, I'm going to fail this class. If I fail this class, I'm not going to get my scholarship. If I don't get my scholarship, I'm not going to be able to do college. And then I'm going to, I'm on the street. I have no job. Parents have disowned me, right? And now in that mindset, I'm going to try to answer a question. And the test isn't causing it. The test is a piece of paper with some words that are inviting me. So now I coach people who take the bar and stuff. When they notice, they're not like that. Sometimes they're just in the mode and they're just in the flow and they're just taking the test. And then in another moment, they're spinning. If they don't notice, they're going to lose all kinds of time. If they notice and do a reset, which for one woman was just really feeling her feet on the floor and her body on the chair, and she would relax into the chair and she would take a breath. You know, because she was all about, there's not enough time to do this. I have to go fast. I have to go fast. Well, sometimes, you know, we have to go slow so we can show what we know. And so when she came back to that place, I said to her, I would like you to greet the question. Hello, question 32. What do you have for me today? She wouldn't say that out loud because everyone would look at her like she was very, very bizarre. And then she would say, what do you have for me? And then she would take the question in, and then she would see what she knew about the question, and then she would say whatever that is, and then she would greet the next question. She would greet the next question. From this mindset about finances or about any other piece of this, about why people don't think about these things like I do and what could possibly be their problem, blah, blah, blah. Like, that's not going to help me figure out how to talk to that family member. In fact, if I talk out of here, it's probably not going to go well. So we really want to come back. And now that I drew all over this, I would want you to know that this thought right here, the one that came through, that my loved one is going to work at the hospital today. That's a thought. Makes sense why it would be in your thought parade, because they're your kid or your partner or your parent, and they're going in to do that work. When we start to grab that thought out of the stream and start to have a lot of thoughts about that thoughts, that's how we get up here. Yes, there are some concerns about finances. Me too, right? And what's the future like? And you know, my quarterly statement came today from one of my investment funds. You know, not even going to open it right now, right? So I just want to notice the condition of my state of mind, because as I move through, because as I move through this day, I want my wisdom and my common sense to help me navigate the situation with my kids, and with, you know, all the things I need to do today, and to take care of myself while we get to the part where we have more data. So I'm going to close the chat out. I wasn't looking at it anyway because I got into what I was talking about. Thanks for noticing. I will read all of that. And keep noticing and resetting. Just like the rumble strips on the side of the road help us stay in the lane and help us. We don't notice those rumble strips and don't notice that we're off course and then just stop our car. We notice it's off course so we can come back into our lane and continue down the road, right? Because life requires us to continue down the road. So, okay. So. All right, so just to do a quick check of your external environment, we're already kind of teaching, so hopefully you've shut down your phone and your everything, and you're just kind of right here, right now with us. And then also, just because we just talked about some of those things, I just want you to settle right now. And how I want you to do that today is going to be, I'm going to pull this up, read to you. Wherever you're at, we're just wanting you to be able to start to fall down, like the snow globe, just settling. So what I'd like for you to do is just take a few breaths. What the skill is we're going to talk about today is remembering a centered moment, or the centered moment, like the most recent centered moment maybe. So I just want you to take a few breaths right now as you hear my voice. Hopefully my voice is soothing and not some kind of irritating to you. I hope that you'll hear the love and the care in my voice and the invitation with my voice for you to just start to settle. Just for right now, we can be up in about stuff later, but just to right now, let's just have a moment where we give ourselves permission to settle into our core energy, to settle into who we are, our default setting. Just take, maybe do a 3-breath reset even, just noticing that energy on that second breath and just taking a more relaxed position. And then I'd like you to close your eyes if you want to, or look at the candle flame, or maybe find a spot in the floor just a few feet ahead of you and just focus on one spot on the floor, whatever you're most comfortable with. But whichever of those you pick, I'd like you to just sort of let your gaze soften and relax. Feel yourself sink into your body. You might have just been up and spinning around, and so now you're trying to settle and you're trying to come back home and actually embody your body in the chair that you're in or wherever you're sitting. Give yourself permission to settle into that core energy. And then I would like for you to remember a time when you were centered and at your best. The circumstances might have been kind of dicey even, or maybe they were simple. I'll give you a couple examples. One is when I was outside earlier today, and I could just, I was caught up about something, and I just let myself listen to the songbirds in my neighborhood for a few minutes. And they're just the sweetest little creatures that are here to remind us about life. And so I just sat and listened to those songbirds and just had quite a sweetness. I would say my feeling state was calm, and what I filled up with was sweetness. A different kind of story, I'm remembering once when I was going through a breakup with the other mother of my kids. And we were the family that summer at the ballpark that was coming apart, which it's always kind of hard to be the family that's coming apart and everybody's kind of, you're like in a fishbowl related to that. There was a lot of tension. And my youngest son had asked me to bring my mitt. It was his brother's game. And I said, sure. And he wanted to play catch with me. And so I was there with my mitt, and we were there, and it was just tension, you know. And then I said, hey, Duncan, let's go play catch. And so we came over here to play catch for a while. And I wanted to connect with him, but I just wanted it to be private, kind of. And I was wondering, like, how can I let him know that we're okay, it's okay, we're good. And so at one point, he threw the ball to me, and I don't know what possessed me, but I caught the ball, and I kissed the ball, and I threw it back to him. And he caught the ball, and then he did this with the ball, and then he kissed the ball, and he threw it back to me. This is like a 10-year-old, right? And so we just stood there for a few minutes, and at every throw, it just settled deeper and deeper. And I would say my feeling state was very grounded, and steady and present and open. And what I filled up with was love and joy, sweetness, fierce love and sweetness. I was touched. So sometimes when I'm spinning around, just because when I have that thought about finances, it sends me that way, I can actually use how my thought and my imagination and my creative capacity works to help myself go the other direction. Meditation does that. Guided imagery does that. Like somebody, instead of laying awake in bed, thinking about all the things that could be wrong, Belle Ruth Napperstack, my favorite guided imagery instructor, social worker, she would invite me to think of sitting on a rock warmed by the sun next to Lake Michigan. So when we invite, sometimes that also helps us settle. These are just release and relax ideas. And there's no right or wrong one. There's the one that works for you. So when I have a lot going on and I feel overwhelmed or I'm saturated with stuff to do and I need to clear my field, sometimes picturing being with my wife on our dock at sunset in a shared moment of connection opens up my being. And that's, oh, there I am. Oh, here I am, right? So I'd like for you to, for a moment, to be in that space, where you're just looking at the candle flame, letting yourself have that moment. And then I'd like you to see if you can remember a time, simple or profound, whatever, where you were centered and at your best. And try to remember that, bring it, let that memory become fully alive in you right now. And just imagine remembering the moment, just noticing how what your feeling state was, what your physical and emotional feeling state was, and then what did you fill up with. And I just would like you to type in, Megan, this is where you were going to help. Megan's going to read the words for me, and I'm going to actually try to capture them. This is me with an FFT trying to do this together. So I'm ready, Megan.
Trust, peace, warmth, calm, joy, confidence, gratitude, whole.
Hang on a second. I lost one. Confident, whole,
safe,
happiness.
Yep, happiness, thankfulness.
Okay, hang on.
Silence.
Oh, hello, silence, my old friend.
Content. Gratitude. Fulfilled. Appreciation. Connection. Thankful.
Hang on a second.
Space.
What was that?
Space.
Oh, cool.
Centered. Hope. Competence. Believed. Faith we have on there right already. Yep.
I would say safe. I also said sweetness.
Safe was one of them.
And then love.
With humor.
Yeah.
Wholeness. Trust. Refreshed. Resilience.
I would say calm.
Real.
Yeah. Real. Deep. Real. This is your well of being, right? And I know you can't read what I wrote here, but I'm going to take a picture of it, and it's going to show up in the slides next week. So this will be our group's well of being. This is your innate health. This is, there's more words we might add to this as we go. But as we talk about thought today, which is something I create, like this energy is back behind my ability to even create thought. It's universal. I would say this is timeless. Words I've heard described here might be awe-inspiring. It's ever present, meaning I can't tell you that your next moment's going to be one of these moments, but it could. And the fact that it could, regardless of circumstances, is really powerful. And I'm not saying that we should have this every moment. I'm just saying it's possible. That's helpful because when I'm having a hard time or I'm startled by something, the fact that I now have come to believe that I can come back to this energy and it can help me. Wisdom, grace, ingenuity, insight. This is like source energy, life energy. This is what I was saying last time when I said, and some of you liked this, that life is not my circumstances. Life is the energy that flows through me that allows me to respond to those circumstances. It's what allows me to get my bearings and then decide what I want to create next. which we're going to talk about a little bit more in just a minute. And I really wanted to talk about this, and sort of, I have to be really honest, when I was first learning this, I did not believe that I had this. If you're out there and you had a hard time, this is me, I was like, I don't know my centered self. I haven't seen her in a good decade at this point, right? So I had to just be curious about it. And actually about a week after that first training I was at, I had a moment where I had a peaceful, easy feeling. Of just gentleness I just felt a gentle openness. And I was like, oh, I think maybe that's what they're talking about. Now I've come to believe that this flows through me, and that it's actually, when I'm not caught up in a thought, go back to that other picture, although I put it somewhere. When I'm not caught up in a thought, when I'm caught up in a thought, it like caps this down, and I maybe can't feel it. If I can notice that I'm caught up in a thought, and I can just start to have some distance with that, I open back up to this flow. Sometimes my arm would be like one thought, and when I bring my attention away from that thought, I have new thoughts that come. Not all the new thoughts that come that are helpful, but there's just a flow to that. So we're going to come back to that, because this is what I want you to, like, so you're going to acknowledge that something's happening and that you're having emotions. And the reason why you want to be willing to release it, in this moment, the energy of that, is because you're wanting to have access to this. Remember, resilience for me is a set of skills. A, I know I have it, and B, I can access it when I need to or want to. And I'm going to let myself have more and more times in my life where I'm connected to this energy and this fresh new idea. I value this way more than I value even my education or all my rule book, all my beliefs. That's the bucket where I have memory-based thought in my bucket. And when I'm here, I'm just open to the gift of thought. Mind, thought, and consciousness are all flowing through me in this kind of a state, which we'll talk about a little bit more in a minute. So again, going back to go forward, the inside-out nature of our experience is that we're creating it this way. We're creating out of this formless default setting where I have nothing on my mind, I'm just resting in this energy, then I'm going to have a thought, and that thought's going to get brought to life. And then that's where the thought cycle comes in. So we have external circumstances to contend with, for sure. And we're also creating our personal reality of those circumstances right now. 100% of the time, whether you're awake or asleep, you're having a creative process. And so I was sharing with Megan, she really kind of appreciated this. I'm putting my clock back on if you're wondering why, because otherwise we might be here again till like next Tuesday. So these are just this metaphor is helpful to people. So is reality for you like a thing that you're just photographing and you're just capturing reality and you don't have much to say about it? You're just taking the pictures of what's real. Is that the way you're framed? Or are you the artist? And are you crafting your personal reality in this moment to moment to moment? And so what gifts am I using how am I using my gifts right now? Change that slide, messed it up. How am I using my gifts right now? And what gifts am I referring to? Like, how am I using my gifts to create this experience? What am I creating? So that we're back to mind, thought, and consciousness. Megan's going to put a link in the chat. I found in the past couple days, I found an animated video that I feel like gives a good beginning piece of what the 3 principles are. So you can feel free to look at that later, if you will. Please try not to go do that right now, but maybe copy the link right now so you have it. So again, whether we're awake or sleeping, we're creating our experience, which is why clinically what I'm hearing right now is a lot of people are having a wide range of a bizarre, scary, anxious dream. Some people are sleeping just great with no dreams. The situation with the virus isn't causing us to have dreams. For some of us, we're trying to process. So sometimes when we're tightly holding our experience at bay, when we're like don't want to worry about finances or something, like we're trying to like have like a ironclad, I'm not thinking about that today. When we go to sleep, those thoughts those little buggers, they get in there and the thought cycle is the same whether we're awake or sleeping. A thought we become attached to that thought, and then physiologically that thought comes to life. Our bodies don't care if we're having a thought that's an old thought that's not happening right now. That's why post-traumatic stress happens. Or it doesn't care that it's completely made up and it's futuristic and unrealistic. When we attach to it, our consciousness, our sense of awareness just brings it to life. And when we're doing that at night, so here's the thing I was sharing with Megan before we started, like there's not really any difference between a daydream and a night dream, or a nightmare and a daymare. Nightmares and daymares, we are just having insecure or fear-based or scary thoughts that are being brought to life while we're sleeping or while we're awake. We kind of want to, like, while we don't have a lot to say because our witnesser is also sleeping, when we're awake, we kind of want to notice that. Like, am I caught up in a thought store or jumping on a thought train that's causing me to be afraid, scared, like in my physiologically? And when you wake up from a dream, what our concern should be when we wake up, whether we're waking up from a dream or when we're waking up from a thought storm, the first thing we want to do is help ourselves drop back into our deepest, wisest energy. So the first thing we want to do is try to comfort. But what we try to do is judge it, criticize it, figure it out, fix it, take it super seriously. If we do that, we're going to still stay up in there. So either way, we want to be able to start to come home, to settle. And when we're settled, we might get curious about what was that dream about. That's going to look really different. We're going to be holding it out here and saying, well, what's that about? As opposed to trying to figure out when we're still physiologically connected to it. I hope that's making sense. Just another image of the larger equation that, again, these external circumstances are still important and significant, and they're happening and they're real, and I'm not minimizing any of them. And we all have different stuff. Probably my favorite quote from the week is that we're all in the same boat, but we're not in the same storm. And that's true based on economic status or whether we're working or whether not. It's true based on health inequities where, one person might have different access issues that they can't get the care that they need. Some folks might have pre-existing health issues that are based on health inequities over time, and that's all kind of coming up for them right now. So we're all in the same boat, but not in the same storm. More I could say about that. Some of us, I'll just say that this quote that I saw, which I really appreciated, some of us are like inside and it's just sprinkling outside, and it's kind of peaceful and restful in here, kind of nice. Other folks are experiencing like a thunderstorm warning, and it's starting to look dicey. And other folks are having, they're in a damn hurricane, and things are blowing around. Shutters are coming off the building. So I don't mean to minimize anybody's story, though. I call them unwanted personal circumstances. So we have different daunting circumstances. So in a moment, the internal factors that are happening for you, what's going on with your physical state, your mood, your state of mind, and your rule book or your belief bucket the thoughts that you're having. That rule book is like, some of those are actual rules that you're having, and some of them are just, you're just having a lot of thought. Whatever's going on with the ones that are in red are changing. That's the variable quality. That's what's going on with you, right now. That may not be going on for you 10 minutes from now. That's going to change your personal experience, which is in the gold box. The external circumstances might stay the same over time, but in one moment, with my internal factors being one way, like for example, back in the day when the last time we were in a recession and I was selling a house and I was also a single parent and I wasn't having very much child support and just a lot of burden going on. There would be times it was like at 10:30 at night when I was at Kroger grabbing groceries and having to charge toilet paper. Often I was tired, I was in a low mood, my state of mind was busy, and I had a rule that, I shouldn't put stuff on my credit card, and all of that would make that a moment when I was really, really stressed. And when I could notice that, I could come back to this energy even while I was still standing there. And typically from this energy, instead of just being freaked out about all of that, from this energy, catching my breath, I actually had ideas about how I might generate more revenue or what I might do to reduce something. Really good ideas come through here. But the variable nature is why sometimes when I look out at my world and my circumstances, it all just looks like crap. It all looks really heavy and hard and insurmountable. And often when that happens, I want to just look in and check that emotional wellness check-in, because sometimes I just need to go to bed, right? Like if I try to do anything with any of it right now, it's just going to get worse. And so seeing the variable nature of it can help you interrupt what's not going well. There's those circumstances, let's say the stay-at-home orders. I got distracted a minute ago because I have my clock up here, but every once in a while I still get a text. I just saw something, I didn't really read it, about President Trump having something about 3 governors, resistance to stay-at-home, whatever. So those orders are out there. Those orders aren't causing us a particular reality, or we would all be having the same reality. They are out there, and we are all having individual, and I would say variable, throughout the day. I might have a different experience. There have been a couple times where I've kind of had a thought about the stay-at-home order and felt really constricted and restrained, and wanted to do it something, and just feeling resisting and resenting. That's when you notice you're resisting and resenting, and fall back and wonder, like, okay, do I support the public health part of this? I'm a person that does. So, okay, so I'm going to need to drop my resistance and figure out how I might have fun in a different way, or how I might connect, or how I might create a graduation moment for my son differently than we had planned for his college graduation. So the stay-at-home order isn't creating it. We're creating in reaction to it. So here's the thought cycle again. People had some questions about the already thought bucket. No, all the things in the already thought bucket aren't bad. For me, the color red doesn't mean that. It just, sometimes they're hot, and sometimes they're, it was just to distinguish. So it's memory based. There are thoughts that you've had before. They might be some conditioned thoughts, like some thought habits that you have. These are thoughts that you've had many, many, many times before. Sometimes, like, our low self-esteem thoughts are already thoughts, but our beliefs about our best aspects or qualities are also already thoughts. Our education is in there. So there's all kinds of things, positive and negative, in the already thought bucket. And then in terms of the new thoughts, not every new thought I have is high quality or high grade. Some of them are total crap. Like, I often say to somebody, something will occur to me, and I'll say to them, this is either super wise or total crap or somewhere in the middle. I don't even know, but this is the thought that I just had, right? Take it, leave it, whatever. And so, moment to moment to moment, you have this parade of thoughts. You've had thousands of thoughts already today. And what we're trying to help you see is that in that moment when you have that thought and you attach to it, it's called fusion. When you and your thought are attached, this is a thought, and when I'm attached to it, it's not even just flat like that. I can't see any other thought but this one. But also, when I get into that thought, now I'm just kind of inside that thought. And I'm experiencing everything through that filter. If I could like take these glasses off and put a different, I'm seeing them through that lens. When I have that, when I'm attached to that thought, that's what's coming to life for me. So we know that folks had some already thoughts about the coronavirus, because when I asked you what your first thought through, there was a lot of folks that had some conditioned responses related to fear, anxiety, hopelessness, death. There was a couple folks that had like fascinated. And I don't know if that's like they have already thoughts about the science of it, and so it's an already thought fascination, or if it's a brand new curious, what, this is so curious kind of fascination. I need to know more from that person. But the question I'm wanting you to start to get curious about is, why am I having the thoughts I'm having? And again, there's how thoughts got in there in the first place, of a wide variety of sources. But there's conditioned thought habits, like you have now gotten accustomed to some of them, and you don't know that you have habits about it. So when you have an ingrained habit, something will occur, and your first thought through might like be very like, whenever this thing happens, my first thought through is this. There are people, whenever I hear their name or see them, my first thought through comes through, and it's positive, and it's like, oh, I love that person, how awesome. I see them across the street, my very first thing is joy, right? I can think of a person in my family where, like, when I think about them, I just lighten up and brighten up. And then there are some folks in my family when my first thought through is heavy and conflicted and challenged. Interestingly, the person that I think light and bright about has some challenges in their personhood too, but that's just not the first thought through I have. So my experience, it's like the idea that the person who's my biggest nemesis is probably somebody else's best friend. How is that even possible? Well, I'm guessing that their friend doesn't have the same first thoughts about that person that I do. And if I want to have a different relationship with somebody, I have to be willing to sort of notice and possibly set to the side those first thoughts through. Because as I say in AA, if you always think like you always thought, you're always going to have what you always got, because that thought creates your experience. So just noticing that the relationship, as that thought comes in and gets attached to your consciousness and starts to bring that to life, that's what brings you your experience. If I go back a couple, how many, that thought comes, it starts to get brought to life. You immediately start to have the feeling of that and the physiological experience of that. And then you tend to have, make my laser today, you tend to have thoughts about that thought. And that starts to look like the spin that was up here. One thought that has gotten really attached and going pretty quickly. It's easy to forget that we're thinking and then just be dealing with what we're creating. And when we have that feeling, if we forget everything that's below it, when we're having that feeling, when we try to understand why we're having that feeling, we tend to look out instead of in. So when you have a big feeling or reaction, that's when I want you to get curious. Do I have a thought? Am I thought activated right now? Am I making up a story? And I'm going to give you a couple metaphors, because metaphors, like different metaphors work for different people. We're going to get curious about what we're making up right now, how that's coming to life. We bring good things to life. We bring not good things to life. We bring thought to life. That's what we do as people. And notice you want to notice if you get hijacked by a thought. You want to suddenly gripped. When you feel your stomach flip, it's often because you've had a thought, and that's being brought like physiologically to life for you. Again, fusion is that when you and your thought are so fused together that there's no separation. So when we're fused with the thought, we're like getting fooled by the thought. we believe the thought. We think the thought's the gospel truth. We think that it's not an expression I use very often, but there it is. It seems like reality, and you don't tend to see the other thoughts. You get so invested in it. I actually think one of the ways you could think about the mental health continuum is how hijacked by and fooled by thinking is a person. And when a person I have paranoid thoughts. I don't know if you have paranoid thoughts, or maybe I'm the only one, but I think most of us have paranoid thoughts sometimes, and most of us have anxious thoughts, and most of us have sad thoughts, and most of us have depressed thoughts. The difference between myself and somebody with paranoid personality disorder, down way on the continuum, is they'll have a thought that someone's watching them, and for them, they're living in the movie where that is super real and true. And they don't know that they're having a thought, and they're fully invested in the story of that thought, and it's impacting their behavior. If you've ever seen the movie A Beautiful Mind, it really describes that. It shows you what that might feel like for a person. And so for me, when I start to see that, I might feel or see that I'm having a paranoid thought. And if I have now, I used to hang out with paranoid thoughts. I used to be a person where if I went to see a scary movie and there was an image of a guy, dead in a closet, I would have a hard time being in my house by myself, because I would imagine those things, and then I would physiologically feel as if it was really happening. And then I would forget I was making it up, and then I would actually feel like there was somebody in my house, right? Some people like to pay money to have that experience. For me, back then, because I didn't have these skills, I got too fused and believed too much the story. It's the difference between having a thought pass through and say, yeah, that's something I need to think about, and then getting like totally hijacked by that. So we want you to begin to start to see that you might have some habits, and those are not conditioned thought patterns that you had when you were born. You developed them over time. And that to me tells me that, for me, that they weren't my nature, they were learned. And so as I got more and more skilled at being able to notice and reset, I stopped getting as fused by as many unhelpful thought habits. Some of my thought habits used to be, poor me, why me, what have you done for me lately? Oh shit, I'm in trouble. I'm in trouble. That one, I still have that one. That one still comes, and it still I still get a little hijacked. And I love my wife. She'll see it on my face, right? Because physiologically, like, my eyes get big. Like, I used to have someone in my world that would say, get those big eyes away from me. But like, I'm with somebody that knows that when my face is like that, she knows I'm hijacked, and she'll just say, in the sweetest voice, she'll just say, no one's in trouble here. I just want to talk to you about this or that. I'm like, oh, great. I really appreciate that. We got to start catching on to the habits, or we're going to be living at the mercy of the habits. So it's a lot like making tea. I know that sounds weird, but I want you to see these principles this way. So my body is like the cup, and my consciousness is like the water. That tea bag is like my thought. And I talk to folks that make tea all the time, and they'll tell me that when they open their tea cupboard, what's right in front? It's the tea they use all the time. And so similarly, in my thought cupboard, the thoughts that come often fast are the thoughts I have the most often. So the kind of condition. So something will happen, and the first thought I get through, if before it was a hurt or a wounded thought, or I'm going to try something new, and the very first thought I have about it is an insecure thought. That insecure thought is like the tea bag, and when I put it in my consciousness, it starts to brew insecurity. And I know that's corny, but we're going to get worse in a second. And I ask tea makers all the time, if you want your tea to be stronger, what do? There's three things. They increase the ratio of tea to water. So you can either have less water or more tea. So you could bring more of that thought, or you could sit with it longer, hang out with it longer, or you could get active with it and steep it. Similarly, if I'm having an insecure thought and I bring more insecure thoughts, that's going to get stronger. If I sit with it a long time, it's going to get stronger. And if I get active with it, including if I try to fight myself about it, and now I'm just brewing all kinds of insecurity. If I'm like that, and then Megan says something to me about how, you know, things are going really well, and she really appreciates how much time I'm putting in, and she offers some expression of appreciation, I might have this thought that was more of a generous thought about myself, and now instantly I'm not brewing insecurity. Now I'm brewing generosity about my spirit. Or if I'm get off the phone with somebody and I'm really struggling, and we just had a fight, that person and I, on the phone, I'm brewing hostility. And then I go outside and do a 3-breath reset and notice how many of the daffodils made it through the snow and the snow and the snow, and how pretty it is outside. And I take a breath. Now I might have a serene thought about what a beautiful backyard I have, this little piece of land that I share with my wife. And now I might be brewing serenity. Moment to moment to moment, the tea changes. Unlike tea, once you make tea, it's that tea forever. With us, as soon as we release the thought, we come back to default, which would be like just clear water. And then another thought makes another thing. So that helps me when I'm stuck on a certain kind of thought. Maybe I'm caught up in thoughts about money, not having enough money, and then I reset, and then I have like at that Kroger, I'm like I was like hostility because I should have been getting more money, scarcity, making scarcity, like I don't have enough, I'm not enough, I'm not going to have enough, it's not going to work out, we're not going to be okay. A lot of us are shopping in the scarcity thought store right now because the uncertainty. Oh, now we're making uncertainty, right? And then when I would quiet down, because the woman at Kroger would just be sweet to me and say something, I would engage with her, and then I would just quiet. I might have a thought about how to make money. That's prosperity or creativity, right? So what are you brewing? Is what are you brewing right now? Is that the only option? If there were 10 other people here, would anybody have a different idea? Is this the only possible reality I can brew? Or am I willing to loosen my grip on this one and see if something else might come? We're just wanting you to start to change your relationship. You cannot get less of that feeling or less of those thoughts by leaning in and fighting it or doing more thinking about it. That's why you really want to take a break, because it's what allows the water to clear. 2 other metaphors I'm going to share with you. One is, it's kind of like, because I'm wanting you, please notice your thinking. Don't judge it, just get curious about it. So some thoughts sometimes I'm in thought and it feels like I'm just ruminating, like I'm just working it. My friend Millie says it's like, sometimes she feels like her thoughts are like worms that are just all like, she's just feeling like she has wormy thoughts. Just had a thought about Millie and just my heart got big. That's how thought works. So this idea of thought stores is like, are there certain things you say to yourself that take you into the, I used to shop sometime in the I'm a Loser Mom store. Like I said, poor me, why me? It's the superhero store where, like, here I am to save the day. It's all up on me. It's the over responsibility store. There's all kinds of different thought stores that you might shop in. I'm gonna wing it here, Megan. Just if anybody has a thought store you already know that you shop in, just go ahead and chat it right now for just a second. What are the thought stores that you might already know? Just to give some examples that are not mine. Anybody have one? The insecurity store. Yeah. Shame. Oh, wow. Shame. It's a very dark store. There's a lot of heaviness there. Worthless. Some people shop in the, I've been cheated. I know there's soundtracks in these stores. I've been cheated, been mistreated. The sort of victim store. Sometimes I shop into the martyr store. Store. They're not all negative either. The paranoid store, grief and loss. Yeah, they got to do it all. Got to do it all. Like that's that superhero store. It's my fault. Worry. Piglet runs that store. Oh dear. Whereas an owl runs the store where he has to be the smartest owl in all of the 100-acre wood. Fat store, ugly store, unworthy. How can I help you? Yeah, like you might need to take care of your own thing and your own, but that thought takes you into over helping sometimes, and sometimes that can lead to codependency and all different kinds of things. I should. Oh, the shoulda, coulda, woulda store. That's a big store. The hopeless store. Change won't happen. Yeah, that's a big one. And inadequate. Okay, it's competition. Darkness, sadness, regret. Oh, the regret store. Like we can just really work up a big ball of regret. And we're shopping there. And you know what? Shopping in the regret store, this is the point. Shopping in the regret store does not make me accountable and does not make me do things that are different. It doesn't help me like move beyond. It doesn't help me circle back around. Because when I'm in there, I'm just so shut down with what the feeling state I get when I'm in there. It's hard to breathe in the regret store. When I come back out and be like, okay, I wish that hadn't happened. That's what regret is. It's like feeling guilt about something that's happened in the past. Is there anything I want to do about it? Right? That comes more from here, like an inspired idea about it. All right, so you're getting the stores. So the next one is thought trains. Okay, because so sometimes it feels like I'm stewing. I'm going over and over a thought. It's repetitive. I'm just sort of stuck in there. And then sometimes it feels like a thought just comes and it just takes, like I just take the midnight train there. So it might, sometimes I jump on an anger train. Sometimes, by the way, I can feel the emotion of anger when I'm here. It can be very powerful. I'm talking about like when I just get swept away in a thought really quickly. So we're just looking at like the being hijacked kind of, those kind of qualities. So you might have different thought trains that you get on or thought stores. So those are all just ideas, like what tea or what are you brewing? What do you find yourself brewing? Do you need to be brewing this particular thing? Is this the only option? We're just, instead of being so fooled by and living at the mercy of our thought world, which I didn't even know I had one, let alone I was spending so much time in thought stores that there was absolutely 100% no way to feel good about myself or life, right? Suicide happens because people spend a lot of time in thought stores. They believe the story there, and then they take behavior out of that. If we do not recognize that we have a thought world and that that's not our only truth, and be able to have some distance from it. This is me with a craving with no knowledge. I'm in it and I'm using. This is me. Wow, I noticed that I'm having a craving. Whew, it's a big one. My values don't want me to follow that, so I better make some space for that emotion because it's a big want. Or I'm feeling the craving because I don't want to feel the sadness, so maybe I'm going to have to feel the sadness because I really don't want to follow that craving train to the bar or some other outcome like that. So I'm hoping this is making sense. Just wanted you to sort of start to get curious. Please, two things. Don't judge yourself for the thoughts you have. We are all quirky characters. And at the beginning, my mental mall of America in my head, the stores that I used to shop in, I don't shop in those anymore. I mean, I do. Some of them I walk by. Some of them I go in for a little while and I don't, like I still get anxious and I can still get swept up into scarcity sometimes. I think my closest people would say sometimes I probably bought too many groceries today because I might have had some scarcity thoughts. That still happens, but my mall has changed. And mostly I spend less time in the thought stores and more in my health and well-being. And that's kind of what we're wanting you to experience. Where instead of living in the thought stores and occasionally visiting this, I could predominantly hang out here and do my life and do my work. And I still shop in thought stores. What's mood got to do with it? If you look at this mood elevator, if you're in a lower mood, and you have that kind of quality, you're much more likely to draw from your already thought bucket instead of having fresh thought. And of the thoughts you're going to draw from your bucket, you're going to draw the ones that are more problem focused, more difficult, more heavy. You're going to get more pulled into the story. You're going to be less aware that you did that. And you're at risk of low mood thinking and low mood behavior because you're in a low mood and we lose perspective sometimes when we're in a low mood, which is why we want to be just checking in. Because if I know I'm in a low mood as I'm going into a staff meeting, I will be more likely to witness myself when I start to get into thoughts that aren't helpful. I'm more likely to maybe not have low mood behavior. But if I don't even notice that when I go in, I don't even have any clue that I'm in a low mood, there's going to be, like just last night I said to my daughter, I think I'm really in a low place right now. I was talking about how I wasn't feeling like this was going to be a good session, and I was making up stuff. And I said, you know what, I'm just really tired right now. My energy's kind of low. I'm kind of in a low mood. So, I'm just going to lay down for a few minutes and reset. If I hadn't, I probably would have been up later, and it would have been clunkier, and I would have had a lot of judgment, and I would have had much less of a nice night. The word HALT here is from the 12-step program. They would encourage people to try to avoid being too hungry, angry, lonely, or tired. Because when we're hungry, angry, lonely, or tired, we tend to make up more misery, and then we tend to want to go numb that misery in some way that's probably not lined up with our values, the values that took us to sobriety in the first place. So that's a different version of the emotional wellness check-in. Hungry, angry, lonely, tired. Hungry and angry are physical state, so is tired, and then lonely is more of that mood quality. If you're hungry, angry, lonely, and tired, and your state of mind is open, that's different than if you're also busy-minded. Watch out, that's like Tasmanian devil kind of stuff in there. I don't know why that cartoon character came to mind. So I love this quote. The day you decide that you are more interested in being aware of your thoughts than you are in the thoughts themselves. That means being more aware of how thought works rather than why am I having this thought. The thought, why am I having this investigation nature of why am I having this thought? What does it mean about me? That's not you separating from the thought, it's you leaning in. But I love this. Like the day you decide that you're more interested in being aware of your thoughts than you are the thoughts themselves is the day you find your way out of the mental mall. We are deeply fooled by our own fear-based, rule-based thinking. And because we're outside-in oriented, we don't even know it has anything to do with our thoughts. So we're kind of double stuck. We're stuck because we have fear-based thinking that's going to make us brew only one kind of insecurity or scarcity or hostility or negativity. And we don't even know it has anything to do with us, and it looks like it's the circumstances. So we end up double stuck. We don't need to control our thinking. And somebody asked the question of how can I trick myself into having more positive thoughts? When you're in this sort of place, there's more positive thoughts that come through in the first place. We do not have to take a negative thought out and put a positive one in. We're just really wanting at first just to start to, this is fusion. We want some diffusion strategies just so that if there can be a space, I know somebody, Megan and I know somebody who they used to hold so tight, no space between them and this truth, this belief, is that they were defective and flawed and unworthy of love and belonging. That was their belief. And for years, I was just starting to say, can we consider the possibility? Just consider the possibility that that might not be your only truth. And then like a long time later, she said, I'm willing to consider the possibility that I might be a little bit fabulous, right? As she started to take space and just have some moments of neutral, new thoughts could come through. New thoughts can break through our story about ourselves, just like new thoughts can come, just like grass can grow up in the middle of a parking lot. It kind of grows through there. A new thought, we just want to make space for new. I used to be so attached to my shame-based, insecure, poor me, victimized story about myself that it's like there was no space between me and the story. And as somebody helped me just start noticing in the moment, that story started to span out, and then I started to have new discoveries. Like the story was, I can't do public speaking without trauma. And as I had moments where I just settled myself in front of people, turns out I can do all kinds of public speaking, including a new thing like this, without being in that quality. Public speaking happens upset optional because I've learned how to make space and have a new story. I have a new beautiful story about who I am and the way I love and the way I live and the way I connect and what I create, that came from considering the possibility that the self-loathing, shame-based story wasn't my whole story. And actually, I wasn't born with that story. I was born like just free of story. And then I started creating that story, and some people helped with that story. And then dominant culture helped with part of it, because when I realized who I was in terms of my sexual orientation, the messages weren't very positive anywhere around me. This is pre-Ellen. There wasn't really any place to look. And then you go look see what does that mean? And all the stuff is like not who I am, right? Story, 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 story. I wasn't born that way. And as I started to get that was how I was conditioned or like socialized, like puppy training, right? Like the zookeepers teaching animals how to, I don't actually have to participate in that. And look, like now I thought I was only okay if you all liked me. And now I'm not opposed to you liking me. That's kind of cool if you do, but my worth is actually about me. It comes up and through me. Different story. I hope that gives you a little bit idea how thought works moment to moment. What am I brewing? And over time, what story am I walking around in belief? What do I believe about myself? If I continue to believe all that like it's some kind of big truth, how can I feel or be any different? We want to loosen our attachment to temporary thoughts. And we also want to loosen our attachment to conclusions we have about ourselves. Because really, you ain't seen nothing yet. And who knows what I can become. Because when I connect here, I have all the possibilities. Amazing, amazing grace. I have all the possibilities. And then there's the story that I have. I hope that's helpful. When I just put them here in a different color. I tried to trick you. It's either in a different color. Acknowledge that we're having some thought and honor the feelings that we're feeling right now, and then be able to release that thought in the moment, jettison it in the moment, separate from it just a little bit right now. Breathe and remember, like Simba, remember, it's Mufasa. Remember who you are. Remember who you were before you made up that story. Remember who you were before that breakup, before that sexual assault, before that thing occurred, before you got demoted, which is part of my story. Like who like that I'm not worthy. I shouldn't even be here. I should just go away because that's embarrassing. To like, what's my contribution on campus post being demoted? Right? Post that experience. That experience didn't define me. It happened, and by the way, I'm never going to be thrilled that it did. And it's never going to feel like it was just or fair or right that it did. And it didn't define me. And a lot of good has come from my work since that time, because I didn't believe what someone told me was my story. Sometimes the story we're holding is ours and we created it, and making up a lot of errors along the way. And sometimes it's what other people tell us is our truth. That's like internalized oppression, is when when I'm in the target group and someone's oppressing me, it's when I believe the story. Women, very much internalized oppression happens because women continue to participate in the story of their own minimization. And until we start to see that we don't actually have to be that story, there will be a change that happens. Again, it's that outer circle of the model. So just what do you think about that? Okay, Megan, I'm actually 6 minutes over, but are there any Q&A out there?
Please add them to the Q&A chat. So one to start with is, I have two that have come in, is can you, like, as they're to notice the physiological feelings, what are some of those physiological feelings, or what might they be looking for that will help them acknowledge?
So you just want to start to get curious and notice, like when you're feeling angry, where does it show up in your body? We're going to talk about this a little bit when we explore the emotions, which will be part of next week. But just sort of say, like, when you are feeling the experience of shame, what happens in your body? It might be different than mine. For me, when I'm feeling shame triggered, I feel like this mushroom cloud of heat come up, and my my ears will get red. That's probably related to my blood pressure. I feel hot. And I know I wasn't feeling that way a minute ago. Something happened. So as you start to wake up this witness, I know, for example, I know that there's language I use when I'm frustrated that I don't use, like the word really. Really? Are you kidding me? Right? Like that's verbal language that tells me that I'm having a reaction. Once I notice that I'm having a reaction, I can get curious about the reaction. Actually, the homework this week should help with this question, because we're going to have people do, it should be ready on Monday for you, the centered and not centered handout. And that starts to help you see the difference. We want you to know who you are, what you sound like, the language you use, the way your body feels when you're centered and at your best. And we want you to start to notice when you're reactive, because that's what helps you notice what you want to notice is the shifting, because that's how you start to catch on to the fact that I just my shoulders came up and right, I got it. Like, my dad's face on, like I want to feel that happen. I used to get my dad's face on and not even know it, because I wasn't a witness. Other people had to endure that. But now I'm more able, more often, to feel it and see it coming.
Okay, the next one. Can you elaborate on the last 3 R's? For example, you started and explained the honor, acknowledge, honor, and release, and that made a lot of sense. But what does the relax, respond, reflect, resolve?
I got it. I think I got the question. So the release is your willingness to let go of what you're physically creating right now, and to use a reset skill to start to help you do that. What you're relaxing into is this feeling state, this place of possibility, this expansive energy that's always available. It's like, this is what I was just making up. This is what I could possibly make up. So we're relaxing back into who we were before we got startled. We're falling back into our innate health and well-being. So that's relaxing into this energy. When you're here, because some of the people I learned from made it sound like that was just it. Like, we're going to just quiet down. Right. And I was like, well, I want to quiet down so I can make some change, or so I can figure something out. Like, for me, it was like, I think it's a both and. It is like just an and, quieting down. And then for me, when I'm in this space, I actually then want to look out at what I think needs to be taken care of in my life. I want to reflect on my values. Who do I want to be? How do I want to respond to this? What's my best self want me to do? What are 3 things that I could do that would feel useful and helpful, lined up with who I want to be? We're reflecting on our values here. We just got off. We're noticing, we're coming back, catching our bearings, and then asking, what do we want to do? So the question might be this week is, in that moment is, how do I want to show up and be brave right now? What do I want to bring right now? What matters most to me? Is this the kind of partner I want to be right now? Am I really using my energy so that when I go to bed tonight, I can feel good about how I use my energy? If I wanted to go to bed tonight feeling really good about how I used my energy, what would I do right now? That's a reflection question. We'll talk more about that in the very last class that we're going to talk about. And then the resolving is when my wisdom, upon that reflection, when my wisdom says you should do this, the resolving is actually doing that, whatever that thing is. That's how we get value-guided behavior. The last 2 are about your values and value-guided behavior. And we're going to talk about that. I'm going to show you what the last 3 sessions are going to be in just a second. And you'll see how we're going to talk some more about the emotions, and then the value-guided behavior is coming.
and I think this probably leads into that a little bit. So I'm going to kind of combine a couple of questions, but I'll try and make it brief. When people are centering, or as they're going through this class, and probably centering in the process of it, it feels heavy. It feels like it's too much. It doesn't feel uplifting. How, when it feels too much, how do they work through that?
I think that it's feeling like too much in the moment that you recognize that you're sad, or you're recognizing that there's losses, recognizing the deep meaning of what's going on. And so in that moment, I feel like you may have accepted what's going on, so you're not resisting it. And in that moment, we just have a lot of emotion. And so part of it is you're at a place now where you're letting yourself feel when before you might have been running around. And people are like, oh, well, then why am I doing that? I don't want to have to feel. I'm like, you have to, like, as you get better at that, this is why next week we're going to talk about just making space. So if you feel the heaviness, you want to just honor that and just say, yeah, this is really big. And then I want to sort of imagine where I'm holding that. Like, let's feel like it's just like a weight in my chest. I kind of want to imagine making space around it, just letting it be, and also letting it emanate. Like when I was at the Costco last week, because I had made that mistake, I was feeling a lot of that. I don't want to resist it and try to tell myself not to feel it. Yep, I'm feeling it. So I often say, yeah, I'm feeling it. Woo! Like when I have a grief wave hit me about my mom or about anybody that I've lost, it comes over me. What you want to know is if you just let it pass through you. You're the wind chime. It's the wind. It's just heavy right now. If we hold it open, it'll pass through. And maybe you're going to cry. Sometimes people have rules about crying, so they can't, next time we're going to talk about doing heavy better. Like, we live in a feel-good culture that just tells us just not to feel, don't worry, be happy. We need to get better at feeling. And that's what we're going to talk about next time. And Megan, that's all the time we have. So I just want to just sort of share briefly what's coming next. Is next time we're going to talk a little bit about psychological flexibility, the model, and point you towards some ongoing learning you can do, which will take all of these skills deeper. And also we're going to be talking about that making space for the emotions. So please don't be afraid of the emotions you're feeling, and trust that you're going to continue to learn how to feel them, metabolize them, and release them. No feeling that you're ever having in that moment is going to last forever. So you just want to open up around it, accept that you're having it, and just allow it to be there till it goes. If you get your hands off of it and just allow it to be, it goes faster than when we resist it and hold it and struggle with it. Yep, I'm sad. I'm going to cry for a minute. Okay. All right, now what do I want to do? Okay, and then we'll talk about self-compassion and self-care, which are factoring in here, and then value-guided behavior. Your homework that you're going to get a little explained to you in your email on Monday. So you'll have homework from Monday to Friday. There's 2 worksheets that I'll want you to, actually 3 different worksheets. One is that centered, not centered exercise. One is to just do an initial check on the psychological flexibility measure. And then there'll be some other questions for your self-reflection worksheet. Thanks for being here today. Please, as you're noticing your thought, don't make it all about the thought. The more important piece is coming back to this energy, remembering a moment when you were centered, using a practice skill to help yourself come back to that more expansive energy right here, just for right now. Take good care. See you next Friday. If anybody has a big question, feel free to email me. Laughman, Laughman, @msu.edu. Take care.